Welcome to the Shenandoah Valley Partnership at the Table Forum. I'm Jay Langston, the Executive Director of the Shenandoah Valley Partnership. We are very pleased to have you join us today. Jason El Koubi, the CEO of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, is with us today and is presenting to our investors and partners to talk about the opportunities, challenges, and the strategic priorities of VDP and what is going on in the trends of economic development that are affecting both Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley. This episode we're calling What is Blooming in Virginia? We have to always talk about our agricultural and food and beverage roots here. And for those of you who registered, you should have received a bouquet of flowers from Harmony Harvest Farms. You may remember Jessica and Stephanie, who did one of our cooking shows a number of episodes ago, and they have grown significantly and ship nationwide. So we look forward to having you participate in this forum with us, and we will be back after the presentation from Jason El Koubi.
Good morning, everybody. It is awesome to be back in one of my favorite parts of Virginia, surrounded by many friends, many old friends and some new friends too. And thank y'all for inviting me. Thanks for having me. I wanted to, first of all, my first time at the Rock. So Greg, thank you for this. Know your organization well, primarily through Lucas and everything he does to represent y'all so well in the economic development community. And great to see a lot of my economic development partners who I'm in this work with every single day. Jay, of course, is a big part of that and helps keep the Valley organized. But a lot of folks here representing different counties, different cities, utilities across the Valley. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. And I've got at least two VDP teammates in the crowd too. I saw Alex Taylor this morning and Debbie Melvin. And anyway, Valley residents. So what I wanted to try to do today is cover a number of things, and there's a lot of good news to share, as Jay was sharing, but there's also some stuff that we're going to need to navigate, and it's not just the stuff that's in the headlines every day coming out of Washington. There's a lot of other stuff that we're going to need to navigate. I've got some thoughts on that, but I also think that it's important that nobody has all the answers. So let's hopefully get into a dialogue on some of this as we get into the conversation. I've called my presentation "Going Beyond Number One." And the reason for that is Virginia has had an incredible amount of accolades over the last year. This is nothing sort of new to us. We are America's most decorated state by most measures of sort of business climate, but it is somewhat new in the sense that so much of this has come at the same time. You guys saw back in July, CNBC recognizing us as the top state for business in America. And that's the one that everybody kind of focuses on. And then one of the economic development rags, Business Facilities Magazine, put us on their cover as the State of the Year is what it's called. And in some ways, the one that was most meaningful to me is one that came out just recently, something we've been kind of chipping away at. And it was significant because the CNBC ranking is a ranking of how Virginia performs on objective data measures. So they're looking at measures of how awesome our education systems are and how great our infrastructure is. We show up really well when you look at the data. Okay, we do well in just about everything. In fact, we're the only state that's in the top half on every single major measure. Okay, very balanced state, the kind of state you'd want to bring home. It's Friday. I didn't mean to go there. It's Friday. But the reality is, our reputation in the market is good, but it hasn't caught up to all of the strengths of Virginia as a business climate. And so when you look at survey data, when particularly business executives get surveyed about what they see as the top states for business, Virginia shows up reasonably well. We're typically, over the last several years, we've been, barely inside the top 10 or outside the top 10. But one of the top surveys is done by Chief Executive Magazine, and they survey their subscribers every single year, and they ask about, what are the top states for business? What are the worst states for business? We've been outside the top 10 ever since since before I got here. Back in, I think 2013 was the last time that we were in the top 10 in that survey. Now we weren't, 45 like my home state, but we were. If I got to Virginia, I was like, well, we're 13. What's wrong? So anyway, I had a lot to learn. So anyway, we're back in the top 10 on this ranking, and I'll share a little bit more with you guys about that. But I called my presentation "Going Beyond Number One" because part of what we need to think about is, look, we've got a lot of momentum, and kind of where do we go from here, and why should we be sort of urgent about keeping our foot hard to the gas when we're in this position? Like, why is it so important when you're in a good place to keep pushing? So I want to talk a little bit about that. But I also want to talk a little bit about going beyond number one in the sense of like what does this all mean, and why should we actually care about this? And why is economic development important? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. When we talk about the purpose, why do we actually do this? Why should we actually care? We should care about this because it enriches lives. And I'm not just talking about more money. I mean, it is more money, but it's all the stuff that's actually important that money helps you get. It helps you get secure housing, gives you the dignity of work, the ability to take a vacation. I mean, we hear these amazing stories about people who are able to do things they've always wanted, like buy school pictures for their kids. And the reason we're able to do this is because the jobs that we're securing for Virginia and all of Virginia's regions through economic development are jobs that pay more than the average wage in the area in which they're created. So for half or more of the people who have access to the jobs that we're securing, this is a shot at a better life. And it also, let me just jump ahead here. Oh, thank you, Jay. You got this. And it's not just that, but it's giving them a great sense of purpose. I mean, I think, and a ability to do something that's important to the country. I think about, what's happening in Waynesboro with Northrop Grumman and the big announcement there, and just giving that community, kind of doubling down on what, Waynesboro is doing for the world. And you see these kinds of stories across Virginia. It's also enriching our communities in the sense that it's giving them the resources to do all of the other things that are important to a great community and a great future. Investing in schools, investing in infrastructure, investing in public safety. The average project that we work on, the average projects that we at VDP work on with localities across the valley and across Virginia and with regional organizations like SVP, when you net it all out using conservative math, it adds about $8 million to the bottom line of a community to pay for all of the other things, net. And it also enriches the Commonwealth. Economic development is a wealth-creating machine for the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's one of the few things in government where if you put $1 into it, you get more than $1 back to the general fund. Again, conservative math here, looking at the last 5 years or so, for every dollar that the General Assembly puts into VDP's budget or puts into incentives or other things that relate to economic development, that's returning to the general fund about $7. And so that's more money to fund all of the other things that we should care about as Virginians, from schools to roads to everything else. And we've had a lot of success in this enterprise in economic development across Virginia. Just over the last, this is 7 years or so since the beginning of 2018, nearly 700 project wins, more than 100,000 new direct jobs committed to Virginia. That doesn't even count the multipliers for the retailers and for the services and the restaurants and everything else. That's just the direct jobs. And more than $100 billion in capital investment all across Virginia. And when a new business comes to town, it typically makes the front page of the paper and all that kind of stuff. But look at that blue box. About more than 2/3 of that are expansions of existing Virginia companies that are thriving in Virginia, that are saying, hey, we're in for the long term. And I'm really proud of that. We've had some historic project wins. These are the big skins, some of the big skins that we've put on the wall in Virginia over the last few years. You can read about the significance of these things, but we've been winning many of the largest economic development projects in American history, some of the largest projects in Virginia history, of course, in different places across the state. I mean, this is not just a Northern Virginia story. This is a very diverse story that takes in Southern Virginia, it takes in west of the Blue Ridge. But those projects get a lot of headlines, they get a lot of attention, but the vast majority of stuff that we're working on are the kinds of things that you see here, that you see in the Valley. These are not, 1,000 job projects. These are not, tens of billions of dollars in capital investment. But these are the things that make communities strong. These are the things that diversify the economic landscape of a region. These are the things that help existing businesses expand and have a multiplier that ripples throughout the economy. And again, more than 2/3. One of the things I like to say as a guy who runs a state government organization, I like to say it because it's really helpful, but it's also true, and that's convenient, is that one of the things we benefit from in this era of government where there's a lot of things to fight about is we still enjoy in economic development the benefits of a long-term bipartisan approach, and that's great. Great relationships, across the General Assembly, a lot of support, a lot of interest in supporting economic development and helping Virginia maintain its strengths, which are many, and everybody is proud of the work that we're doing here. So why do we have to be so crazy, even on a Friday morning, about how to keep ourselves in a great position? And the answer is here. It's because all of the other top states for business in America are our direct competitors. And most of them are in our backyards. Many of them border us. We are by far in the most competitive economic development, the most competitive business region of America. And we've really got to bring our A game every single day. I think you guys can read this slide, but we are in a race, and our competitors are right at our heels. Now, so one of the big things that we do at VDP is we try to establish a thoughtful, coherent strategy to position Virginia and all of its regions for economic development success. This is something that the economic developers in the room are very familiar with because it's a very collaborative process that we go through every 2 years of updating this plan. And one of the things that we want to make sure that we always do is we want to make sure that we set the right big goals for how to position Virginia. There's 5 of them. The first is to position Virginia as a leading state for growth. When we started this work back in 2017, Virginia was sort of middle of the pack in terms of its growth rate. The way that we look at this is basically looking at Virginia's percentage job growth and comparing that to the percentage job growth of the other 49 states. So Virginia was sort of middle of the pack. We've moved up considerably. We are now reasonably consistently in the teens, sometimes kind of coming into the top 10. The other thing that we've done here is we said we want to position Virginia not just as a leading growth state for the number of jobs we're creating, but also we want to be a leader in the quality of the jobs, which is why we're so focused on making sure that the jobs that we're securing are improvements on the local economic mix in terms of the kinds of jobs. But the second big thing that we're trying to do here is to do it in a way that enables each region of Virginia to participate in that progress, to make sure that each region of Virginia is contributing to that first big goal. And what that means is that we want to make sure that every region of Virginia is in positive territory from a jobs perspective. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to grow in the same way. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to grow in the same rate. What it means is that we want to make sure that no regions of Virginia are sort of in this death spiral where they have to be rescued, right? We want to make sure that they're all in a place where, the local hospitals stay there and thrive. We want to make sure it's a place where, the local performing arts center and the local, all the stuff that makes a region great. And what it means, if we're able to do that, it means that every person doing business in the region, every person who lives in the region is going to have access to the benefits of that growth within reasonable commuting distance. Okay? Thirdly, we want to position Virginia as one of America's top states for business. A lot of success there. There's some things we need to work on too. I'll talk about that. Fourth, this is a new one. One of the things we heard from our partners as we were going through this process was, hey, look, VDP has done a great job, the state has done a great job of recognizing the connections between education and workforce and economic development. We've done that in ways that are way ahead of what most other states are doing. But we need to double down on that. This is going to get even more important, and we need to embrace this as a goal where we can get better and better and better and better. And so we said, okay, let's do it. And so we've embraced a new big goal in the strategic plan for economic development to position Virginia as America's top state for talent. And we've got to do that in reality, which means we need to define what it is. What does it mean to be America's top state for talent? But we also need to be that in terms of our reputation. We need to make sure that the world understands us that way. And I believe that if we position Virginia as America's top state for talent, we're going to be in pretty good shape when it comes to positioning Virginia as a leading state for economic development as well. And then fifth, this is a little bit more kind of inward facing, but we want to be an awesome organization at VDP. We want to be innovative, we want to be collaborative, we want to be impactful. We want to be the top state EDO in America, ideally by far. So one of the things that we've done to strengthen VDP, and this has been, I think, really good for the Valley, is to make sure that we're putting the most emphasis on the stuff that's most important. We were inspired by Willie Sutton. Anybody know that name? I was in what's Winchester, top of the valley, bottom of the valley, you'd say. Winchester, not long ago, and there's a Willie Sutton saloon, and I thought that place probably doesn't get enough love. Willie Sutton, Willie Sutton was a bank robber. He's the guy who said, when asked, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So we basically said, look, one of the best parts of my job is also the hardest part of my job, as I was sharing with some of y'all last night, and that's because Virginia is a place where almost any kind of industry sector has a spot in Virginia where it can thrive. Fortune 500 company, advanced manufacturing, logistics, quantum computing, whatever it is. Virginia can do almost anything. And so if you're running a state economic development organization, you ask, well, what are the sectors that you're trying to go after? It's like, well, it's 15 different things, right? But those 15 different things they're all important, but they're not equal in terms of their potential for Virginia. And so we basically said, look, we've got to double down on certain sectors. There's certain sectors where we don't need just one person doing it. We need a whole team. And it needs to be people who have economic development experience, but who also have real industry expertise. And we need to focus on this sector that's not just going knocking on doors saying, hey, do you have a project? We're economic developers. But where we develop a longer term relationship, really understanding the industry so that it's not just transactional, but so that we're engaging that industry and engaging each other to make sure that we're building the kind of environment where these sectors can thrive, which means education and infrastructure and some of the other things that I've already talked about, and taking a holistic approach with a lot more capacity within the economic development community and a much more, holistic approach. That's the stuff on the left-hand side. The left-hand side is going to be 2/3 of the job creation for Virginia over the next 10 years and beyond. And when we looked at those sectors on the left-hand side of this, and we said, how do these match up to what the different regions of Virginia do? Every single region of Virginia had a lot of check marks. not surprising. The Valley checked off every single box. So it's a perfect alignment with what is happening here and your strengths, partly because you're such a diverse region, frankly. But that's a big part of what we're doing to become a stronger organization. I mentioned that there are some challenges that we're going to have to navigate. And this is kind of a summary of this. This is, I think, probably the most interesting slide in the whole deck. But I want to put a few things on the board so that maybe we can talk about it if we have a little bit of time. So just, and I'll try to not belabor too much of this, but a lot of stuff happening on the workforce and talent side. AI and other automating technologies are getting so good. They're getting so good, so powerful, and we're just at the beginning of this. Businesses are trying to figure out how do we integrate this into what we do. How do we innovate our processes? At the same time, you've got the American population not growing as fast as it used to, and it's probably going to slow down further. I think it's likely that we're going to see restricted immigration going forward. And so you've got all these automating technologies at the same time where it's harder and harder to find people. That's going to mean a lot for us. One is, maybe we need to start thinking more and more and more about the job quality. First of all, if it's going to be hard to announce big numbers of jobs, and if everybody's got a job with low unemployment, maybe we need to start thinking more about quality. The other thing is, there's going to be a lot of us who are in our 40s, 50s, 60s that are going to have to learn some new tricks when it comes to work. And so the work that happens, of upskilling and reskilling and our higher education system and other education partners being able to do that, all that becomes more important. The remote work stuff is big. I know that a lot of companies calling their people back, but there's no denying that we're more detached from the office than we used to be. And many people can work from anywhere. And I think that means, with a tight labor market plus, less attachment to the office, the importance of quality of life becomes so much more important because you're going to be competing with people even more on that score. We talked a little bit about next skilling and reskilling. I think that's something that regions that do that well are going to be positioned to win. In the infrastructure and energy category, so much big stuff, big investment just wants to move super fast. And their tolerance for risk is like practically zero. They want a fully prepared site that has everything, and they want to start tomorrow. They want so little, they're so impatient. And so this site development and all the utilities and everything, that's becoming even more important. The energy thing is huge everywhere. Every state is struggling to keep up with the energy demand, which is just, it ain't going away anywhere soon. And we're going to have to figure out how does America supply power in this reality. And we can't wait for 10 or 15 years for the next generation of nuclear to come online. This is a problem now, and the more that we don't solve it now, the more it becomes just a real train wreck. And then finally, some things to put on the board on business decisions and strategy. One is we're seeing the ratios of sort of jobs to CapEx change dramatically. I mean, you see it most prominently with data centers, where you just have these awesome capital investments with relatively small amount of permanent job creation. That's not a knock on data centers. That's just the facts. A lot of construction jobs for sure. A lot of multiplier jobs, but also in this what's going on with automation. We're just going to see massive amounts of capital investment in terms of machinery and technology, and and the ratio to jobs won't be the same. And so one of the things that I think through in economic development is how do we evolve with that? How do we evolve our incentive programs? Northern Virginia people tell me all the time, like, we need the jobs. That doesn't come with a lot of CapEx, but your incentive program requires some CapEx. And you've got the state that cares about the jobs because we get income taxes, and locally you care about the capital investment because you get the property taxes. And so that's going to be a lot to navigate. Speed and readiness, I kind of talked about that, but just, I mean, business decisions are happening so frickin' fast, and the just communities, and this is why it's so important to have strong local and regional economic development organizations, because the need to be prepared, the need to respond quickly, to get it right is so frickin' important. And I think a lot of times you've got communities that are not well positioned to win simply because it takes them too long to get into gear. So that's really important. And then finally, on a similar thing, going beyond the data. Everybody can get the data now, right? You don't need to come to Harrisonburg to figure out who the major employers are and what's the unemployment rate and growth. It's all accessible. And the role of economic developers and other community leaders in doing this work becomes more about interpreting that and adding value and going beyond the data. So those are some of the things that we need to think about. And I hope we can talk about that. So three big things that I think, and this is by means, it's not everything anywhere close, but I think these are three things that are just kind of no-brainer things that we need to do for Virginia. To become a stronger state and to go beyond number one. There's a lot of other stuff that we need to manage, but these are three no-brainers. One, we need to do a better job of telling our story to bridge the gap between our reality and our perception. Two, we need to continue to invest in project-ready sites. And three, we need to really double down on this talent opportunity. I'm going to talk about each of those in sequence. So on telling our story, Virginia is the sort of royal blue line. You can see when we started this kind of new model back in 2017, Virginia had fallen outside of the top 10 on average. These lines are an average of sort of the major business climate rankings. That's what you're looking at. So this is kind of an average of like 5 or 6 different rankings, including CNBC. And so you can see we've been kind of climbing the mountain here. And we are back into an average of number 5, which was kind of the big lofty goal that we set 8 years ago. And that's awesome. The ones that we do really well in are, again, the ones that are based on data. The ones that are okay are the ones that are based on perception. And there's a simple reason for that. The simple reason is that we're not putting our message through as big of a megaphone as other states are. They're using a lot more money than we are to get their message out. We can get to the site consultants. Many of the economic developers in the room were with a group of site consultants at the Virginia Consultants Forum. There's a few hundred of them. We can get to them. We can get to a few hundred people and we can tell the message. But when you think about the many thousands of business leaders in corporate America and around the world, it's too many people to get to. And it's a little bit of an echo chamber. And we need to invest more in telling our story. Virginia right now, VDP has about $2.7 million per year to tell Virginia's story in terms of buying advertisements and stuff. And 2.7 is a lot if you're trying to buy a house. 2.7 million is not a lot if you're trying to tell the story of a diverse state. And so you can see how outgunned we are by some of the states that we're competing with. So we've got to get that number up. That is the low-hanging fruit of economic development. In the context of the state budget, it's not a lot of money, massively important. Secondly, we need to sustain our momentum on project-ready sites. This map, to me, tells the story of why investment in sites is so important. What you're looking at here is basically a shading. So in economic development, we're focused on traded sector industries, companies that are selling the majority of their goods and services outside of the area in which they're created. And what you're looking at here is by locality, what is the top traded sector industry by locality? And you can see that for the vast majority of Virginia, including for most of the valley, it is manufacturing and logistics. Sectors that absolutely need a site. Even if everything is awesome, everything else is awesome, if you don't have a project-ready site, and that's always going to be the first question, show me your site. If an advanced manufacturing project wants to come to Virginia, the first question we ask is, what are your sites that are ready to go with X, Y, and Z, power, water, sewer, gas? Sometimes we hear things like, needs to be near an interstate, needs to be near, it's the first question. And if everything else is awesome and you don't have the site, they don't care. You have to have the site. So we've got to get the site. And for virtually all of Virginia's regions, manufacturing and logistics and the kinds of things that need a site are their single largest source of traded sector employment. And when you look at the project pipeline, it's the single largest source of job creation for those localities as we look into the future. This is essential. Investing in sites is essential. Fourth, and I think I'm going to wrap up here, and hopefully we have enough time for conversation. I want to talk a little bit about what I think it means to position Virginia as America's top state for talent. By the way, we're starting off in a really good place. Virginia has one of the most educated populations in America, the most educated population in the South. We've got great schools, we've got great universities and colleges, we've got a lot of sort of economic development type talent stuff that's really effective. A lot of that's at VDP, great relationships, and so starting off from a good place. And we engaged a lot of the top kind of thinkers on this, public and private, to ask the question, what would it really mean to make Virginia America's top state for talent? And what we heard kind of landed in three different buckets. The first is, well, first of all, if you want to be the top state for talent, you actually need the people. And in an America where population's not growing as fast and where businesses are going to continue to fight over workers, you're just going to need the people, which means you're going to need to attract and retain the people. And so it's a big deal that Virginia is now back in positive territory from a migration perspective, but there's other things that we need to do here. I mean, I was talking about this with Keith from JMU a second ago. We really need to double down on this internship thing, making sure that folks that are getting educated in Virginia are connecting with the businesses in Virginia before they're out of school, to make sure that that it's sticky, that they translate into jobs that are in Virginia and that we keep them here. We need to think about marketing to exiting military veterans. Think about all the people who leave the military in Virginia every year. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep them in Virginia. We need to find that 30-year-old who graduated from JMU a few years ago, who's living out of state, who's probably thinking about buying their first house and maybe starting a family, and hey, come home. So we need to be thinking that way. Secondly, the thing that I think is the one that we have the most control about, we need to be we need to be the best state in America in terms of aligning what we do in education and workforce with the needs of our economy. And if we do that, we're going to see that it's great for business growth and economic growth, but if we're focusing on the education and workforce activities that are aligned with where the economy is and where it's going, that's going to be the best thing for those people. These are two sides of the same coin: economic development success and personal economic mobility. Two sides of the same coin. And so we need to be a real leader in terms of making sure that we're nailing that alignment and not putting too much money into producing degrees that are leading to a career at Starbucks, right? It's that, not to pick on Starbucks, but you get where I'm going. I love Starbucks. And thirdly, in an environment where labor is increasingly scarce, we need to do the things that help people participate in the labor market. Childcare is a big deal here, but it's other stuff too. It means that we need to think creatively about transportation options. It means that we, particularly in areas where an alternative to the car could help people get to work. We also need to think about dealing with addiction in the right ways, and the other things that keep people out of work. So we've broken this down, and we basically said, okay, kind of where are we on these measures, and where do we want to be? And in general, we want Virginia to be one of the absolute leaders in America on all of these measures. I mean, I think if you sort of ask the question, hey, does that feel like what it would be to be America's top state for talent? To have the people and to have the alignment and to to have very robust labor market participation. And if we're the leader in all of that stuff, I think we can put our flag in the ground and say we are America's top state for talent.
You just heard from Jason El Koubi. I'd like to introduce Olivia Wright, the Shenandoah Valley Partnership Business Development Manager. You may remember Olivia from several episodes ago when we were doing our cooking show, when we were talking about housing.
Yes.
So glad to.
Like just yesterday.
Yes, it does. There were three big takeaways, I think, from what Jason talked about. And food and beverage, you know, what we have done traditionally is centered around food and beverage, but it's such an important manufacturing sector for us in that our location quotient is 5.82, compared to the country. And we have such a depth of infrastructure to support the food and beverage, whether it's like the companies like McKee Corporation and Hershey's and Danone and Bowman Andros, and the list goes on. But it's also that infrastructure that supports it. It's the construction companies, it's logistics, it's cold storage, and everything that supports that. You've had a lot of engagement with it recently, and I'll let you take it over from there, Olivia.
Yeah, so just a few weeks ago, we were actually able to host some site location consultants, some companies in the food and beverage space, some real estate developers to kind of showcase the Valley's value proposition around food and beverage. And so we had a full day to kind of show not only the depth of our food and beverage manufacturers, but all of those support industries that you just mentioned. So we got to tour Interchange, our regional 3PL provider, and show how they support existing food and beverage manufacturers with their cold storage solution. We got to tour Cava and hear about why they chose Virginia to meet their manufacturing needs. And we also got to look at some of our agritourism assets, White Oak Lavender Farm, and some of the regional partnerships they've been able to leverage to develop their products. Commonwealth Crush, which is a co-crushing facility for wine. And so I think we were able to paint a really good picture for our guests of sort of our strengths and the sustainability component of food and beverage in the Valley.
One of the things that I actually asked Jason about, and it's something that you have been engaged with VDP on, is also how are we building that sector? Not across, and not, it's certainly important for us in the Shenandoah Valley, but across the state, because it is a large sector.
Yeah. Jason touched on this a little bit in his presentation about VEDP's new sector teams. And one of those is food and beverage. And I can definitely speak to, for us, that team has been so beneficial. Like Jason mentioned, these folks have just a wealth of experience in food and beverage manufacturing. They understand the industry. So they not only understand from a site selection perspective, but actually the industry itself. And so already we've been able to leverage that partnership to meet with some of our existing companies in the Valley. We've met with a couple of our co-packers to talk about the needs for food and beverage companies to find a co-packaging solution. And I think there's already some exciting opportunities there. And not only to, help us attract new food and beverage businesses, but to really support the ones that are here and kind of build those economies of scale. So I personally can't speak highly enough of their sector teams. That's just kind of given us a little extra as we meet with companies.
Selfishly, we are big advocates of the VEDP innovative framework, which is part of this, because manufacturing is so important for us in our region. It's the largest private sector employment base. It's almost 25,000 people in a region where our population is 380,000 spread out over 140 miles along I-81. Yet our next largest is healthcare with almost 5,000 people less. And so what VDP is doing is really, I think, important, not just for our region, but the whole state, but it's really important for us because we do have some great partners in that group. That's a segue to, I think, the next big point that Jason talked about was sort of the knowledge work. side of things. You just heard some stats that I threw out about what is our largest sector, but we have 10 four-year degreed universities, including our three community colleges in the area, and that is a tremendous asset base for us. And we know that the transition between sectors is really blending. All of our manufacturers, and in many ways knowledge work companies now, not to bemoan all of the other traditional sides of things. And that's what we're trying to do with our universities, is how do we leverage the talent that they are producing into providing a broader, scope for the sectors that we're trying to bring into the region. That was not such a great segue for you, but it is a complex issue for us because we have been so traditionally on manufacturing, yet we're close to the proximity of major markets, and we think we should be able to take advantage of our universities. You want to expand upon that maybe a lot better than I can.
Well, if you tuned in last month, you saw the conversation with JMU, with the Harrisonburg Innovation Hub, with the Shenandoah Valley Tech Council, and that kind of spoke to these sort of centers of innovation and technology that we're creating. And so I think on the knowledge work side, part of it is on us as a region and as a state to say, yes, we're a rural region, but we still have these really interesting clusters of innovation happening and of startup companies happening. And like you said, there's 10 universities here, most of them, 10 universities and colleges, most of them are graduating folks in cyber and IT. We have VMI that has a really cool cyber defense lab. So there's a lot of really good assets. And I think for us, it's just figuring out how to tell that story and show where there are opportunities. We have a lower cost of living. I think the quality of life here appeals to a lot of folks in, the white collar knowledge work space. And so again, we've been working with VEDP's knowledge work sector team to kind of talk about where are these companies going, sort of these mid-size knowledge work companies in peer communities, and why did companies decide to locate there? Because I think the strengths are here in the Valley, and it's sort of just an emerging industry for us. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And to your point, I think knowledge work doesn't just encompass, these software companies or cyber companies. It's also incorporating into our manufacturing companies. So when we toured Kava a couple weeks ago, we got to see their robotic machinery that they're using, which not only helps upskill their workers and how to use that machinery, and it's a higher paid job, but also from an ergonomic perspective, it's much less physically demanding and kind of takes away some of those jobs that are harder to do. And so I think it's to our manufacturers' benefit if we attract more knowledge work, because those softwares are going to be incorporated on the floor as well. So we'll see where it goes, but I think there's a lot of cool things happening in the Valley.
And part of the story is that a lot of our graduates from college don't understand that there are many knowledge work opportunities in these manufacturers, and we have not been able to tell that story. Mm-hmm. So we're also excited about VDP getting into the talent attraction side. So we're very hopeful that that is going to be building here very soon. The last takeaway was something that traditionally has been outside of our scope of work and a lot of economic developers' scope of work. I think traditionally, having been in this business a long time, we're now dealing with issues that we didn't see coming our way: housing, childcare, and transportation. This is something that we're trying to affect change in ourselves. Shenandoah Valley Partnership has created a foundation at the behest, in many ways, of our private sector. The purpose that was driving this was really housing. It was our private sector that was saying, we have a problem, and we see you as part of the solution and we're willing to help. And so over the last year, the Shenandoah Valley Partnership created this foundation. We were able to get a grant from Virginia Housing for the purpose of looking at partnerships. How can we do a better job of providing a more affordable housing? And we know we need to do this with the private sector. Olivia, you're a lot more conversant on the housing side than I am, but do you want to talk about, this grant and sort of the situation writ large?
Yeah, so I obviously care a lot about housing. I was on the housing episode. And so that was one of the exciting things for me when I came to SEP, is that you're still tuned into this housing conversation. I think it's really important because we want our employees to be able to live where they work and be close to work, and it not be a burden for them to find affordable housing that is close to all the amenities that they need. So the study, as you mentioned, is kind of looking at public-private partnership models, and can we apply the same principles of site development that we do for economic development to housing. And so I think we have a lot of employers in the region that recognize the need, that are interested in seeing how they can play a role. And so I think that'll be really exciting to see over the next couple of years. The other exciting thing happening right now is VEDP has teamed up with Virginia Housing to do a large grant called the Workforce Housing Investment Program. I really hope I got that right. But it's a $15 million pilot program that is meant to address the need for workforce housing. So kind of that 80% to 120% AMI. The city of Harrisonburg applied for this grant in a former office space that's right in the heart of downtown Harrisonburg, close to all the shopping, the restaurants, the new Harrisonburg Innovation Hub, to convert that underutilized office space into workforce housing. And they received that grant. And so it's been really cool to see the state recognize not only that this is an issue, but kind of put their money where their mouth is. And I think from a company perspective, it's just another kind of asset that we have, that we know housing is an issue and we're taking steps to address it. So new workforce housing coming to Harrisonburg is very exciting.
It is very exciting. It is a partnership between the state, the cities, or localities, and the private sector in order to make this happen. And we know it's going to take, all three parties working together with that. Well, we hope that we have shared some of our takeaways and some of the important aspects of things that are happening in the Valley, and we will end it there.
See ya.
Bye.